My name's Keith. I'm a meditation teacher for Meditation Breaks. And we do these kind of Wednesday free group meditations to introduce people to what meditation is. There's a lot that you can use meditation for, whether it's relaxing, de-stressing, learning about your anxiety, stuff like that. So we really try to cover the gamut. Is that the right way to say it? We try to cover a lot of different things because there's a lot to cover. So today we're going to introduce meditation for those that are new. Hey, Crystal. And we're going to then talk about a specific topic, and then we'll do a meditation on that topic. Right? And today's topic is about how we can make tough choices. That's always happening. We're always having to make choices, and usually they're not easy. Very rarely do we get easy choices. You ever notice that? It's annoying. Wish we could just get easy choices. So that's the itinerary for today. And if you're new, ask questions, please, please, please. You can ask a question at any time. I will stop what I'm doing, and I will answer it to the best of my ability. And if you're not comfortable asking live in chat, that's totally fine. You can comment on the video later, and I'll get back to you, or you can email me. I have a lot of people that email me. I'll put my email in the chat right now. You can email me at any time, any questions you have about what we talked about or otherwise. Even what my favorite TV show is, I'll answer it. So there you go. So that's what we're going to do today. Does that sound good? So for those that are new, meditation, you probably are here to relax, right? That's kind of the usual entry point into meditation. How can meditation help me not be as stressed, how to be happier, how to be more calm, right? Good news is we're going to get a dose of that today. But meditation is more than just kind of zoning out for a second and relaxing. Meditation is actually a technique used to learn. It's a learning tool. And we learn by familiarizing our mind with a concept or something like that. So we can learn about, like I said before, our anxiety or why we get angry easily. There's a billion things. I'm not going to go all over all of them right now, but it's basically like an internal Google search that you have at your disposal, and you can use to gain some really interesting insight into your own life, right? But first, we do need to relax. It's kind of like a two-step process. And the example I always like to use is if you imagine a lake that is very still. You can see the reflection really clearly in the lake, right? If it starts to rain, can't see the reflection that clearly anymore, right? Our mind is normally like a still lake, very calm, very peaceful, very clear, right? But all of the distractions of the day, worries, bombardment of thoughts coming in all day. You might think like you're like totally calm. Well, no, we're like never calm. All those things are raindrops, and they're making it hard for us to access this kind of peaceful mind that we have and to think about things in a clear, objective way instead of like a subjective way. So the first step of meditation is to clear some of the raindrops, right? And we do breathing meditation to do that, which is a pretty common form of meditation. You probably have heard of it if you haven't done it already. It's technically called single-pointed concentration, very fun, cool sounding thing that means just focus on one thing. That's all it is. We focus so exclusively on our breath, right? That all the other thoughts, all the other things that are kind of bothering us, they start to fade a little bit into the background. We clear away some of the raindrops on the lake, right? So that's how breathing meditation can relax us, right? You've probably experienced something similar to this with being in the zone at work or exercising. Sometimes we're so focused on something, so single-pointedly focused on something that other things, other distractions seem to kind of melt away a little bit. It's the same concept. We're going to intentionally do that by focusing on our breathing, right? And this is a really important point, that we use our breath for a pretty specific reason. And the reason is that we always have it with us. We don't have to have anything special, any special circumstances or external conditions to be able to engage in meditation and meditate well, right? We don't need like a super Zen space or perfect quiet or, an hour in a cave somewhere. No, all we need is to just start to get a little better at being able to focus on one thing. So we use our breath because we always have our breath with us. It's like a tool in the tool belt. Does this make sense? This is a very brief overview, I know. But we have a ton of other videos that we've done that maybe go into more depth about it. But just if that is sort of making sense, that's really where all you need to be right now with meditation, right? So we're going to do a breathing meditation right now. It's going to be pretty short, like 5 minutes. So don't panic that you're going to be sitting there in your own thoughts for an hour or whatever. And I will lead it. And essentially, all you're going to do is listen to what I'm saying. I'm going to instruct us to kind of focus on our breathing. And then when you notice that your attention has diverted over to something else that's not your breath, we're going to gently guide it back, right? And this process of focusing on our breathing, bringing it back, is breathing meditation, right? And we'll start to see that some of the commotion in our mind settles down a little bit, right? Some of the raindrops clear away, and then we can do whatever we want with this calm mind. We can use it in a productive way. Does that sound good? Any questions on that before we get started? Oh my God. I always spill water all over myself. Look at this. It's these wide mouth Nalgene bottles. It's the bane of my existence. Okay, if you don't have any questions, great. If you do, just type med anytime. Part of meditation is we're going to close our eyes, so I can't answer them when we're actively meditating. But after 5 minutes, then I will answer them. Okay? All right, so sit in a comfortable position, or if you're laying down, that's totally fine too. We just want to be alert, I think is the right word. We don't want to fall asleep if we can help it. If you fall asleep, you fall asleep. It's not a big deal. But we're trying to use our mind actively with meditation, active concentration. All right? So sit or lay. Just make sure you're comfortable. That's the number one thing. Make sure you are comfortable to the best of your ability. And then close your eyes and listen to what I'm saying. Follow along with what I'm saying. We're going to do a short breathing meditation. So whenever we start to meditate, start a meditation, we always want to check in with ourselves. How are you feeling right now? In this moment? Are you happy? Are you sad? Neutral? Excited? Anxious? Tired? Whatever it is, it does not matter. All that matters is you notice it. Take note of how you're feeling in this moment. This is called mindfulness. Noticing what your mind is doing moment to moment. So having checked in with ourselves, we can turn our full attention to our breath. We can breathe in and out through our nose very gently, very naturally. We do not need to take big, deep breaths or forceful exhalations. Just breathe as you normally would, in and out. We don't need to change anything about ourselves to meditate. So just breathe. and enjoy following your full breath in and following your full breath out. At some point, you may notice that your mind has wandered and is no longer exclusively focused on your breathing. Maybe it's thinking about something that happened earlier or something coming up later in the day. Whenever this happens, just gently guide your attention back to your breath. As simple as that. Non-judgmental. Guide your attention back to enjoying your full breath in and enjoying your full breath out. By focusing on our breath single-pointedly, we may start to notice some things that we hadn't noticed before. Maybe how the air feels cool on our nose as we breathe in, and how it feels a bit warmer as we breathe out. And we can notice our shoulders rising and falling with each breath. Allow yourself to relax. Allow yourself to relax into your breath. Keep bringing your attention back to your breathing whenever you notice it has drifted. This is meditation. You are meditating. You are training your mind to relax, to be calm, to be peaceful, and you're doing it all on your own, with nothing other than your breath. How wonderful. How wonderful that you are able to do this. So just enjoy breathing in and out for a little while longer. Allow yourself to begin to relax. Okay, and when you're ready, you can open up your eyes and release your concentration on your breathing. Return to me. How'd that go? Any first timers willing to say how that went? It's always interesting hearing how people's first experience with meditation is, because some people find it to be kind of easy at first. Most of us, including myself, find it to be difficult because we're not really used to doing this, right? We're not used to focusing on one thing. We're used to multitasking, right? That's what we've been told is the best use of our time, doing as many things as we possibly can at once. Maximum production value, right? And that might help you get your to-do list checked off a bit, but it's not that good for having a peaceful mind. We're kind of inviting the bombardment of thoughts and distractions by multitasking. So we're training ourselves essentially to not multitask, to focus on one thing. So it's going to take time. It's new for us, right? Regardless of what age you are, you've been basically not doing this that entire time. So it's going to take time. So easy to wander. Yes. Right? This is a very interesting thing, right? When people first start meditating, right, a very common response is, my mind seems busier when I'm meditating. My mind seems like all over the place, even more when I'm meditating. And actually what's happening is, for the first time, you're noticing what your mind is doing all day long, right? We just don't normally notice it because we're very distracted by all the things we're distracted by. So if you can imagine, like, this is happening all day, it's kind of it feels exhausting, right? This is why you're mentally exhausted at the end of the day, right? So yeah, it's super easy to wander, right? And we can notice that and let that be kind of right? Why is it so easy for my mind to wander, right? Because we're not used to this. We're not used to doing this. Sleepy already. Look, falling asleep or getting sleepy when meditating is not terrible at all. Because, usually when we fall asleep, we're relaxed. We want to do that, right? But finding an in-between, I guess, is ideal. That we're relaxed enough that we're kind of chilling out, but that we're not, we don't got Z's coming out of our head. But if you fall asleep, that's fine. It's very common when you first start meditating. One thing I would suggest is check your posture a little bit when you're meditating. If you're finding you're getting very sleepy, so if we get hunched over, we start to fall asleep. So that's a little tip that we can work on, but it's totally fine as long as you're relaxed a little bit. That's where we want to be, right? So once we relax our mind, we don't just want to kind of go back to inviting all the crazy thoughts. We want to use our relaxed mind productively, even if it's just a little bit more relaxed, right? Even we clear away 5% of the raindrops, right? We can see the reflection in the lake more clearly, right? So we want to use our relaxed mind to investigate something. This is called contemplation. And this is kind of the second part of meditation. It's really where meditation shines in terms of being able to change our outlook on things, right? Change our life, really, by using a clear, relaxed mind to think about some things in a different way. So today we're going to think about making tough choices in a different way. We're going to investigate some things about making tough choices and see if we can't find a couple of things that might help us. Right? There's going to be two things we're focusing on. One, we're going to look at what our mind is doing when we're having to make a choice. Like what feelings are coming up, right? And then two, we're going to look at what the role between mental space play, like what role does it play in our decision making? Right now that means nothing to you, and that's totally fine. But we're going to talk about it, and it will become clear as we start to talk about it, right? So first, we're going to start by thinking about what our mind is doing when we have to make a choice, right? This is very important. It's very important to monitor what our mind is doing. Normally, we just kind of let our mind go, and we're along for the ride, just barely hanging on as our mind's flying around, right? So being aware of what your mind is doing moment to moment is really important. This is mindfulness. We talked about this in the meditation a little bit, right? So we can think about what's our mind doing when we have to make a choice, right? Well, first is we encounter the choice, right? So it's not like some revolutionary idea, but we're going to come across a crossroads or something like that. We have to make a choice. This happens a lot. It's totally unavoidable. That's the big takeaway from this, right? Having to make tough choices is entirely unavoidable, right? And so already we can start to gain some insight, some wisdom in knowing that we have to accept the fact that these tough choices are going to come up. And if we can do that, we might not be as surprised by them when they do pop up. Normally we're actually pretty surprised, like, oh, I wasn't expecting to have to make a choice here, but we have to make choices a lot. So it's important to know that it's unavoidable, right? So we encounter a choice that we have to make, and then we start to label this choice, right? Important, not important, crazily important, scary, not scary, right? We love labeling things. Our mind loves labeling, right? So we label the choice, right? And then what happens is we start to ruminate on the choice, right? We start to do what I call the what ifs. What if this is the wrong thing? What if this is bad, right? What if this is the wrong choice? What if I'm not doing this correctly? It was like a million things. We don't have time to go through the entire laundry list of what ifs, but you certainly have experienced many of them in your life before. And what happens is we start to exaggerate the reality of the choice by starting to make these kind of distant rumination connections about how this could impact us, right? We start to exaggerate the scariness or importance, I guess, or long-lasting impact of these choices, right? And we exaggerate them so much that we start to feel helpless, and we wish it away. That's the next kind of step that our mind goes through. I wish I didn't have to make this choice, right? I wish this would go away. Why is this happening to me? Right? You ever say that or think that? Right? And that reinforces a feeling of helplessness, which is the main thing to overcome, with making a tough choice. Now, if you've been coming here for a couple weeks, you might be like, well, Keith, that actually sounds familiar. The steps that you just described sound familiar to the steps of another thing. And I would say, wow, it's a very astute observation. The steps that I just described are almost identical to the steps that we go through when our mind is developing anxious thoughts, anxiety, right? Fear. Having to make a tough choice brings up to the surface our anxiety, fear. Is this the wrong choice, right? Does that make sense? Anxiety, fear, they all come from uncertainty. They're based in uncertainty, a fear of the unknown, essentially, right? So our main target when we're trying to combat how we handle tough choices is uncertainty. Crystal, I thought I recognized those steps from my anxiety notes. Indeed, it's the same. So very good on you. Good for taking notes. So our main target is uncertainty, right? We do not like things that are uncertain. I don't know if you've noticed that. We spend a crazy amount of time trying to create certainty in our lives. Even something as simple as a to-do list is a attempt at creating certainty in our day, right? My day is going to go like this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to finish this, and then that completely falls apart immediately, right? We don't like uncertainty. We did a whole class on uncertainty, so definitely go check that out. It'll give you a lot of information about how our mind handles uncertainty. But for today, we're focusing on really important thing is understanding how uncertainty and fear are connected, right? And then how that plays into our decision making. So I want you to go back in time to when you were a kid, right? Imagine you're a kid and you're in bed, right? Got your eyes closed, getting ready to drift off into a sweet slumber, and you open up your eyes for a second, you see a shadow on the wall, and you're like, oh my God, there's a monster, right? So you scream, Mom, Dad, I think there's a monster under my bed. Right? Mom and Dad begrudgingly wake up and run into the room, and you're upset, right? Because you think there's a monster under your bed. Please look. Mom and Dad look under the bed. They rummage through some of the clothes that you probably put under there that you weren't supposed to, and they say, there's no monster here. There's no monster under your bed. And what do you say? Are you sure? Are you certain? And they say, yeah, I'm certain there's no monster under your bed. What happens? Immediately, no monster. You relax a little bit, right? Your fear starts to vanish, starts to dissipate a little bit with certainty, right? It's a very interesting connection. The fear of having to make a choice comes from uncertainty if the choice is right. So by the same logic of like the monster, if we can find certainty in our choice, then our fear of the choice will vanish, right? That makes total sense. And we do this now, right? If I can just think about it long enough and hard enough, I will know what the right choice is and I won't be afraid to make it, all right? You ever do that? It takes a while. Do we ever get there? I don't know. Sometimes, maybe. The problem is that we are looking for certainty in our lives, but there's very little certainty to be found, unfortunately. I don't know if you've noticed. Life is pretty uncertain, right? We're essentially looking for something that does not exist. We're looking for something to help us in our decision-making that doesn't really exist in the way that we think it does. We're kind of looking for the treasure on the wrong island. I use that analogy a lot. The certainty that we need to start to look for is the certainty in knowing that life is inherently uncertain. It's a very strange way of thinking, right? Certainty in knowing things are uncertain. Because if we know at our core that life is uncertain, then we start to recognize that there really is no inherently right choice to make between these two things we're trying to decide. There's just choice, right? We don't know how it's going to pan out, right? There's no way of knowing. And just because our choice maybe doesn't pan out the way that we imagine doesn't even mean that it was the wrong one. It just means that the idea that we had kind of thought of in our own head of how things are going to go wasn't exactly how things went, right? Things are very uncertain. If we can know with certainty that there is no certainty in our choice, the fear of starting to make that choice will begin to dissipate a little bit, just like the monster under the bed. Does that make sense? It's a little heady, but it's interesting to think about, right? We need to familiarize ourselves with this truth that life is uncertain. We have to accept it. It is, right? Can't really change that, right? So we need to think about that, contemplate it, think about, well, what things are certain, what things aren't. Are either of these choices, are they going to have a certain outcome, right? Can we know? Can we know? This is sort of like the long-term solution to helping us make tough choices, right? Familiarizing ourselves with this idea that life is uncertain. And you're probably like, well, okay, Keith, that's really cool, but I would prefer to have a short-term fix in place for when I have to make a tough choice. Great, we're going to talk about that. I'm going to give you one. But I wanted to put that out there because it's thought-provoking, right? It's interesting to think about. And you should think about that and see what kind of conclusions you come to. That's meditation. That's contemplation, right? Any questions on that? Maybe you have a lot of questions on that, but you don't even know what they are. If that at all was like, that is an interesting way of thinking about it, then that's exactly where you need to be right now. Part of meditation is uprooting some of the knowns, the things that we think are known, to think in a different way, right? So if that is happening, great, perfect, right? So for a more short-term fix for making tough choices, we can look at the role that space plays with fear. Again, that's very nebulous, but there's a connection between space, mental and physical space, and our level of fear, right? You ever have a really tough choice you need to make, but you don't need to really make it for like a year? What happens? You're like, damn, that's going to be a pretty tough choice, but I'm going to go watch some TV or something. You know, it's like it's not plaguing you, right? Because time is a form of space, and the further away in time the decision is, the less scary it seems to be. Does that make sense? We can also look at physical space, right? The example I always like to use is the storm off in the distance, right? So you're sitting in gorgeous fields of Montana, and off in the way distance is this crazy lightning storm going on, right? Blue skies up by you, but lightning in the distance. And what as we see the lightning come down and all that, what are we saying? We're like, whoa, it's amazing. How cool, right? Did you see that? Incredible, right? We're talking about a bolt of lightning, electricity or whatever it is, I'm not really sure, shooting out of the sky and basically disintegrating anything it touches, and we're like, whoa, cool, right? And the reason that we're saying whoa, cool is because there's space between us and the scary thing, right? As that storm gets a little closer, not going to be as cool anymore. We might get a little nervous, right? The fear starts to build, and we want to go and seek shelter, right? This is an example of how physical space plays a role in our level of fear of something, right? This also is true for mental space, and that's where we're going to focus on. It's the same for how I'll say emotionally close you are to the choice that needs to be made. Are you the centerpiece of this choice? Is the storm over you, right? Do you ever think about, do you give better advice to people? Like, do you give better advice to other people than you do to yourself, right? You ever think about that? The answer is almost universally yes. It's pretty interesting, right? Whenever we think about that, which was not often, we might come to the conclusion that we give better advice to others than we give to ourselves. Right? Imagine your friend wants to get a new job, right? Pretty common tough choice we have to make. Do I leave this job and look for another, or do I stay with this job, the sure thing kind of, right? So your friend's like, I think I want to leave the job, right? But I don't know what to do, right? I don't know what to do. Got any advice? And then you're like, okay, let's break this down. It's pretty simple. Do you like your job? And they're like, the friend is like, well, not really. I'm like, okay. Do you think you'd be able to get another one? Maybe one you like more? And then like, yeah, probably. Okay, there you go. Leave your job. Like it's so clear, right? The advice that we're giving, right? But when it's us, when we're deciding if it's our job that we're going to have to give up or, find a new one, we're like racked with indecision. We start to ruminate. What if I never get another job? What if I lose my house, right? Like all these things, right? That we're not really as paranoid about when we're giving advice to somebody else. Start to crop up when it's us, right? Same situation, changing a job, two totally different responses to them, depending on, is it you that has to make this choice or the friend, right? Have you ever encountered that? Seems so clear, doesn't it, when you're giving advice? It seems so simple. So this provides us with an interesting way to reframe our choices, right? We can imagine, if we have a hard choice, we can imagine our best friend in the exact same situation. Truly imagine, not like, oh, I wonder what my friend would do. Like really sit there and picture them in this exact situation. And how does the situation now feel? Does it feel as scary when it's them? Does it feel as important when it's them? What advice would you give your friend? And then think about, why would your advice to yourself be any different than that? Right? Why would you give different advice to yourself than your friend? Right? We wouldn't voluntarily do that. It just kind of instinctually happens because fear and space, right? The fear is there when it's us, when there's less space between us and the choice, right? And that's really what we're doing here. We're trying to create mental space, just like the storm off in the distance. We're trying to create mental space between us and the tough choice. The tough choice is the storm coming at us, right? And so if we can do this technique to kind of put our friend in this situation and make some mental space, we might find that the situation feels a little less scary. And then that in and of itself makes things a little more clear. Our mind is calmer, right? There's less raindrops, just like we were talking about. Our mind is calmer. And so we can think about it more clear in a different way, maybe in a more like interested way, less fearful, more reasonable, more objective, less subjective, right? Does that make sense? Do you like that? Easier said than done, I suppose. But that technique, I find it works quite well, actually, if you can commit to doing it properly, right? You have to really commit to putting somebody else in that scenario, right? And then just like when we would bring our attention back when our mind drifted from focusing on our breath, when you start to go back to like, oh my God, this is happening to me. Nope, bring it back to your friend. Think about what's going on. How does this make me feel if it's happening to my friend? What advice would I give, right? So we're using the same concept of breathing meditation to help us make choices easier, changing our perspective, even just for temporarily to see what kind of insight we can get. Cool? Sound good? So we're going to do a meditation on that very thing that we just talked about right now. And this is, again, technically called a contemplation. And all that means is you're thinking about something single-pointedly, right? And seeing what kind of conclusions you can drum up. So we're going to do that, and we're going to see what kind of conclusions we might come up. And everyone might have a different experience. Maybe you don't have a conclusion at all. We're practicing. This is all a practice. It's training. Meditation is training our mind through concentration, right? And just like training to drive a car or to jump rope or to ski or anything, it takes time and practice and repetition. Okay? Any questions before we start? Because I know this is a lot of words being said. So if there are any questions, now is the time. Or you can ask after. This is not really pressing. This is not a tough choice. Okay. All right. So for this kind of tough choice meditation, I got to think of a better name than that. We're going to start the same way that we did before. We always, regardless of what we're meditating on, we're starting the same way. We're relaxing our mind. We're clearing away some of the raindrops, right? So we're going to do a quick breathing meditation again, just to clear away some of the raindrops, and then you're going to listen to what I'm saying and follow along. That's my job, is to guide the contemplation, and we're going to think about how maybe we can change our perspective on a tough choice using a best friend, all right? Same thing that we talked about here, all right? Sound good? Okay, so sit comfortably or lay down. We'll make a promise to ourselves not to fall asleep to the best of our ability, all right? Because we're going to be thinking about something. So just get relaxed again and close your eyes and follow along with what I'm saying. Let's check in with ourselves once again. How are you feeling now? Different? The same? What is your mind like right now, in this moment? Just take note of it, non-judgmentally. We're practicing mindfulness. And then once again, let's turn our full attention to our breathing in and out of our nose. Very gently, very naturally. Just enjoy breathing in and out. See if you can follow your full breath in and your full breath out. And then your mind drifts, just bring it back. Gently guide your attention back to your breath, to enjoying breathing in this moment, to relaxing, to being calm, to being peaceful. Breathing in, breathing out. Noticing how breathing feels. The cool air as we breathe in, the warm air as we breathe out. Maybe you're enjoying sitting here and breathing something you don't normally associate with enjoyment. Concentration allows us to find the little joys in life. Keep bringing your attention back to your breath whenever it drifts. This is meditation. You are a meditator. You are training your mind to relax, to be peaceful. You're training your mind to access peace. And you're doing it all on your own. How wonderful. Just enjoy breathing in and out, following your breath to the best of your ability for a little while longer. Through this process of focusing on our breath, we start to clear away some of the bombardment of thoughts that are going on in our mind all day. We start to clear away some of the raindrops, obscuring the reflection in the lake. We can now use this clearer mind to investigate something. Today, we're going to investigate how we can help ourselves navigate tough choices. So just follow along with what I'm saying. That's all you have to do. I'd like you to bring to mind a time that you had to make a tough choice. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be something incredibly difficult. Any sort of choice that wasn't immediately easy. And we can think, how did we label this choice? Easy, difficult, important, not important? What kind of labeling did you make for this choice? What kind of rumination did we engage in? The what ifs. What were some of your what ifs? At any point, did you find yourself wishing you didn't have to make this choice, that it was so difficult? You just wished it away. Did you ever feel helpless to make this choice? Just try to remember what that felt like. Maybe you're still making that choice now. What does it feel like? Now we're going to create some mental space. We're going to use our imagination and imagine that our best friend has to make the exact same choice. Their situation is exactly the same as what ours was or is. Really try to imagine your best friend having to make this same choice. How does the choice feel now that it is not you, but your friend having to make it? Does it feel any different? Less scary? Less dire? Less permanent? What advice might you give to your friend? Pretend they asked for your advice. What would you say to them? What's the first thing that comes to mind? You'd probably be supportive, reasonable, looking at it with objectivity, clarity. take this advice and use it for yourself. Because there is no difference. It is the same situation, just two totally different responses. Wouldn't you want to take the response that feels more peace-inducing, more clear, more reasonable? Imagine yourself taking that wonderful advice you have given your friend. Let that advice fill your own mind and provide some peace as to what you should do or could do for this tough choice. And just sit with that for a little while. Allow your mind to recognize how mental space affects our fear, our indecision. Allow your mind to recognize this, to familiarize itself with this. So that way, the next time you need to make a tough choice, you will remember this. Remember this moment right now. Okay, very good. When you're ready, you can relax. Open your eyes. Stop thinking about your tough choices for a moment. How'd that go? Essentially, what we're doing is the reasoning that we kind of talked through, not in meditation, we're doing that in meditation. And the difference is that when we're in meditation, sometimes it's easier for us to focus exclusively on it. Partially because we're kind of like making a promise to ourselves to do that, right? Like, okay, this is meditation time. I'm not going to think about other stuff. I'm going to try to focus on this. But that is meditation, right? Like, so it's really this two-part of relaxing and then trying to investigate something to gain some clarity on it, right? To see if we can think about it differently than we had been, right? So hopefully the next time you have to make a tough choice, you'll remember this, right? And essentially what we're getting at is that we treat ourselves and others very differently. This is a very big concept in meditation, right? The way we view self versus others. And a lot of interesting things start to pop up when we think about the difference of self and other. And this is one of those things, right? Our response to things that are happening to us are very different than the response of things happening to other people, right? And in the case of having to make a tough choice, sometimes we can use this to our advantage to think about what we might say to a best friend or something. What advice might we give, right? We're essentially removing ourselves. We're creating space and, through imagination, and then we're seeing how our response is different. And then it's on you to take that advice, right? It's on you to think, yeah, you know what? It's interesting that my response is a little less panicked when I'm helping somebody else. I wonder if I can take this advice for myself, right? Hopefully you can. It's hard. It's not easy because, again, we're not used to doing this. We're not used to like replacing our own problems with somebody else. It's like a new thing. So it takes time. It takes training. It takes practice. It takes a little bit of effort and commitment to doing it. But I think you'll find that this is a really good tactic for dealing with making tough choices and also for dealing with problems in general. This is something I recommend doing for when you have a problem, anxiety, anger, right? Like thinking about how you might advise your best friend if they're going through the exact same thing. Cool? Do we like that? Does it feel like a little bit of a cool mind exercise to view things differently? That's what we're trying to get at. To how can we shake up our worldview, all right, and view things a little differently, and then see, is this a better way of handling it? If you decide that it's not, then so be it. Really good. I dig it. Cool. This is you can do this at any time. This is one of the best parts of this little meditation we did. You can do this when you're not sitting down formally meditating, right? Still takes some effort, but like if you come across a choice, you can take a second and think about what would you advise your friend, right? This is a very practical tactic for shaking up our worldview. Okay, cool. So if you have enjoyed this session, this meditation, contemplation, whatever we want to call it, first of all, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. If you found it thought-provoking or, like, oh, interesting, come back next week. We talk about something new each week. I don't know what I'm doing next week. Do any of us? No, I have no idea. But it'll be something different. Good advice. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Joseph. Thanks. So come back next week. We'll talk about something new. Bring a friend, maybe. Yeah, kind of a cool thing you guys can do together. Then you can think about each other's tough choices. And if you want, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. In terms of how that helps you, you get notified when I'm doing a meditation or going live. It's pretty helpful because our lives are quite busy. We don't always remember that we signed up for this or that or whatever. So that's helpful. It's also helpful for me because like YouTube is very strange with how they think things are important or not. And so that's helpful for me. Makes people realize that this is something that is interesting to people out there searching. And I also do private instruction. So this is like a group meditation. If you are totally into it, I do private instruction, which is really helpful because we can focus in on exactly what I'm trying to find the camera, you want to focus in on instead of me like doing broad strokes, right? So my one-on-one sessions online are $25 for an hour. And if I go over, so be it. I usually do. But I try to keep it at an hour. So that's available to you. I do work with schools. I do work with companies like your work. So you want to be a cool meditation person, bringing in meditation person to make everyone chill out for a half hour at work. I do that. So all this information is on my website, meditationbreaks.com, or you can email me. I put the email in chat, and we can kind of figure out how you want next steps to be. Or if you just want to come back next week, do it. See if this builds upon your curiosity of this. Crystal, thanks. Crystal's got my back. She's my hype woman. Kyla, Keith, thank you. Kyla, thank you for coming. It's always nice to see the familiar faces in chat. Familiar names in chat and faces. Some of you have your portrait there. But I appreciate it, all you guys coming back. It's what allows me to keep doing this. I wouldn't be able to do this without you guys. So I have a lot of appreciation for each and every one of you. This was very helpful and serendipitous for me. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I'm glad you found it helpful. That's really meaningful to me to hear that. And I hope you guys have a great week. All right. Maybe some of these tough choices that are inevitably going to come up become a little easier. And I hope to see you next week when we talk about something else. Vasella, first time joining. It was lovely. Thank you. It was lovely having you here. I'm so glad to hear that this was a good first experience for you for meditation. It's kind of like my whole goal of why I started this business and the live streams is to show how accessible meditation is. It's not some weird thing that like some mystical thing, it's literally just the act of familiarizing our mind with something through internal investigation, right? So I'm glad that you found this helpful, and I hope you come back. Meditation is really helpful for pretty much anything that you want to use it for. See you next week. Indeed, Crystal. All right, guys, have a great week. Thanks for coming, and thanks for the support, and have a great week. I'll see you soon.